Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lynn. Today, I'm thrilled to have on coach, musician, John Blackburn from London. Welcome, John. I'm looking forward to having you today.
Thanks very much, Michelle.
I know that there's so many other words in there, so I'll have you introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, I've been working on cutting down the words, so let's see how we go. So, alongside being a drummer and an MD, I coach entertainers to get the security they need without sacrificing the freedom they love. And that's my short version introduction. And the slightly longer version is that, as probably everybody watching and or listening to this knows, in arts and entertainment, one of the big questions is, how do you get that security you need and the creative freedom that you want? Because I think it's Jerry Seinfeld has a gag about the reason he got into comedy was so that, he could kind of be schmoozing around the mall from 10 until 6 and then go to work. And I think for most of us, there's something about the lifestyle of being a musician that appealed to us, as well as the actual activity of creating music. And anyway, it seems like most people's plan to get that is to sort of run harder on the hamster wheel, isn't it? And then hope that somebody from outside their current world picks them off the hamster wheel and gives them some life-changing opportunity. And I think there's a better way, as I know that you do as well. And from my perspective, that's learning to push your own buttons so that you can take yourself off the hamster wheel and build the work and the life that you actually want.
Oh, that's great. Love that. So how would you define the hamster wheel?
I think the hamster wheel is a combination of lack of clarity in what you actually want, which leads to not knowing what activities to prioritize. And I think that's the hamster wheel. I think it's spending more time than maybe you need to on admin because you've avoided doing the admin for the last 3 weeks. I think it's kind of playing with social media, but not actually doing a consistent thing and testing it to see if it's working or not. I think it's spending a lot of time worrying about the font of your website when no one's going to your website. And maybe what you should actually be doing is going and having a coffee with someone. I think it's those kinds of things. What do you find?
I love that answer. I'm glad I asked you this question because I won't tell you that I've just spent the last 3 days doing receipts for my taxes because I avoided it for the last year. So I think I'm on the hamster wheel right now, actually.
I will tell you that it is also coming up on tax time, which next to Halloween is, of course, is the scariest time of the year.
Yeah.
That's a joke from an Australian podcast. That's not mine. I've also been doing that recently, but I think I'm pretty good at the record keeping throughout the year.
Okay.
But I just, the way I organize myself, and I think this is part of it as well, isn't it? It's not about necessarily there being one correct way for all of us to organize ourselves. It's recognizing that for each of us as individuals, there will be ways of doing things that work really well for us that might not work at all for our best friend, even if they're in the same industry, even if we're very similar in lots of ways. So, with something like your tax return, for example, actually, I know that if I just set aside, I basically block 3 days out of my diary pretty much, and I know that I'm going to get it all done, and then I don't worry about it the rest of the time.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of friends of mine, musicians who I've been working with recently, who they tot up their mileage at the end of every week. At the end of every month, they organize their expenses on the thing, and that's how they want to do it. And again, I think a big part of what I do is on the coaching front is having people become aware of what really works for them rather than what they think is supposed to work for them.
Yeah.
And then be able to put it into practice.
I really appreciate you saying this because we are creative people. So it would make sense that there are many ways, many correct ways to do the same thing. And I've recently been also exploring this, embracing your strengths or leaning into the things that are working for you. It does work for me to block 3 days and just do it all at once and not, well, actually I haven't gotten to the part where I don't worry about it for the rest of the year because I still have some, unhinged
I can help you with that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, we can talk later. But I love that. That's what works for me. But someone else, you know, actually my co-founder Deanna, much more systemic. I think they do a monthly finance review and with her and her husband every month. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys do this. Anyway, so
Oh, I
yeah.
bet their spreadsheets are all color coded and everything.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I think they track every dollar or something. I was like, you guys? Okay. Anyway, I just go sip my 4 euro latte and I don't think about it. But yeah, so tell me more about creating. Well, you said you don't, when you said you're about stability, what is the stability that a creative is looking for and how do you help them not avoid that, but to find the freedom that they're looking for?
Wonderful. Thank you. I love these questions. Perfect tears. Well, first of all, what I would do is we recognize that stability as a word is a very different experience for every single person. So in the same way that the way that we might organize ourselves to effectively do our tax return will be different from person to person, subtly. The experience that we're each looking to get for when we say we want stability or security is going to be different. So I'd start there. I'd start saying, well, when you say stability, what do you actually mean by that? We all have a general idea about what stability means because otherwise we couldn't have a conversation, could we? But actually, you know, my idea of security and stability is very different to a lot of the people that I hang around with. I mean, mine is perhaps a little looser than a lot of other people's. But the important thing is I know what I need to organize, what I need to create to have my feeling of stability. Mm-hmm. So I would start with that. I think you have to start there to be effective. Is start by really carefully defining and describing what stability would mean for you without being too influenced by what anybody else tells you it's supposed to be. And if I may, a big part of any of these things, goal setting, especially coming with this NLP, this neuro-linguistic programming background that I have, is that when you define, for example, stability or security, you don't do it in like a dry set of bullet points way. You can start with that for sure. And writing things down is a great idea. Mm-hmm. But in order to really set a goal that does something for your neurology, for your system, you've got to sort of create an internal experience of that goal. So you've got to be able to see what it would be like as best as you can. I mean, we're all musicians, aren't we? So we also, that auditory quality, what you're going to hear that would go with the goal, and the feelings that would come with that goal of stability. Because, of course, ultimately, if someone says they want stability or security, what they're really describing is, I want to feel secure, mm-hmm. isn't it? Like, mm-hmm. there are circumstances that would go with that feeling of security or stability, but what they really want is to feel secure. So just starting with that sensory exploration and clarifying of exactly what you want from that word stability. And that was probably a longer answer than you really wanted, but there you go.
No, this is great. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing this up because we hear a lot from our freelance musicians, the instability of our jobs, the instability of income, that one month you might have a ton of gigs and the next month you don't have any, or the summer season, which is hugely dry for many who teach music lessons, and then the students are off for the summer. So creating income stability is a big concern. Do you have any frameworks or models that you use with your clients to create, or how to even know what stability would feel like?
Yeah, well, I would start with, this is where NLP is really outstanding. So within NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, there's I suppose you could call it a goal-setting framework that they use called well-formed outcomes. And that's basically to do what we just described. So I would start there. So if someone's talking about wanting to create that kind of stability, it would start with the definition of what they meant. Here's a great question. How would you know if you had stability?
Yeah.
What would be the signs in the real world? So you would know because you would feel secure. And what would be the signs in the real world? What would be the sort of tangible examples in reality that you could point to and say, for example, I'll see on my July bank statement this number. That's how I know I'm secure in the summer. Or in my April bank statement, I mean, I'm leaning heavily on the bank statement here, but in my April bank statement, I'll see that I've got this much money, which I know is about enough to cover, and I can go off and have a lovely time in the summer and not worry about it. And it might not be that, but you're looking for things that you would see. And sometimes people say really great stuff, like when they think about it, they say, oh, actually, I can see the other people in the clarinet, the woodwind section of the orchestra that I play in, I can see us on holiday together because everything's fine.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it's not always, but it's just something in that visual field. And then you'd explore what you might hear. So, if you're seeing the bank statement, it might be that you're in your office at home and you can hear the sounds around you, or you hear the clickety clack of the keyboard, or you might hear yourself having a conversation with your partner or a friend saying, oh, everything's fine, I've hit my goal for the summer, or you do that. And then again, you'd explore, there's also an internal component to sound, because of course, we, especially us sort of musician-y types, we have a rich internal dialogue quite often, don't we? So, okay. And that
One
could
way
be,
to put it, yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. So of course, you can use that powerfully and positively. So what do you say to yourself when you look at that, to continue my little example, when you look at your April bank statement and you realize that you've got more money than you wanted, than you needed to have a great summer, what do you say to yourself? And sometimes people will say something obvious like, I did it. Or they'll say, right. And that, the richer you can make that experience. And when you do that, you actually get, you start to get a sense of that experience, that feeling of having actually got it. And when you've done that, you've kind of put your brain into the right gear to start coming up with solutions and make plans and figure out how to do stuff. It's very hard to solve interesting problems, important problems, if you're stuck in the small, negative, scared, worried space. The first step of the framework has really got to be pick what you want in some detail and then get into the feeling space of having it, so that you can then start to actively create whatever you need to create to get it, make the plans. Because, even if you come up with a plan, if you feel awful, it's really hard to do the plan, isn't it? So you've got to do something. And then that would be it. And then the next step would be actually, well, okay, I know what I want. I feel like I could probably have it. How could I do it? And then you go to work on just coming up with ideas. And, there's lots of exercises out there creatively out there for coming up with ideas. But what you tend to see is a lot of the exercises are designed to put your brain chemistry in a place to go for it, So quite often, once you've done that goal setting experience for someone, they just start coming out with ideas straight away because their brain's energized,
Right.
And then it's a bit of accountability, isn't it? From then on, it's just like, okay, we've got some ideas. How could you do that? What was the first thing you do? What might get in the way? Can you handle it if that happens? What might you need to do? Are there any difficult conversations you might need to have? How's this going to affect? You've got to look at it holistically as well. If you're going to make big changes in your working practices, well, okay, how's it going to affect your family? What conversations do you need to have with your partner? What about your friends? Are they going to see less of you? Like, how are you going to have that conversation so everything's okay? So you go through all that and then you just get on with it.
That's amazing. There's so much coming to mind. So I love this idea of really getting into the feeling of it. It sounds like this aspirational identity that you get really clear on who do you want to become? What would it feel like to be that person, the act as if? Because if we have those goals and ideas already in us, then the potential for us to become that version of us is there. It's just a matter of starting to act as that person. So I've done a lot of visualization over, who is the highest version of me? How does she show up? How does she eat? What is her energy when she walks into a room? How does she dress? And then through that, you can kind of make these practical, concrete decisions to up level your life. With your clients, what kind of decisions do you see people making, musicians, to have more of this? I really love coming back to this stable feeling because it's different for everybody, and it also helps overcome that perfectionism where nothing's ever good enough. So if we say, no, like, this is the feeling that I wanted, you can look around, you're creating safety in the brain as well, kind of getting out of that fight or flight. Because
Yeah.
you're coming from a mindset of abundance, looking for possibilities to create these things. Yeah. What would
Yeah.
you say to that?
Well, I'd say I agree with all of it. Yeah. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I think the prime thing that people typically don't do if they're not getting some help is getting their brain into the right space. You know, that, as sort of you put it, the abundance mindset. In terms of decisions people tend to make, yeah, I talk a lot about being able to push your own buttons, which is a decision in itself. So I suppose a number one decision would be that you're going to take responsibility.
Okay.
So that is the number one decision.
That was one of the most uncomfortable things I ever had to accept, that we are 100% responsible for our own lives. It's like, oh, I hate that this is true.
Right. Well, absolutely. And of course,
What do you mean I can't blame everyone else for my problems?
well, I mean, the beautiful thing, Michelle, is you can blame everyone else for all of your problems. It's just not going to help,
Right.
you know, but you can
Right.
do it.
Right.
And of course, we all know people that do exactly that, don't we?
Yeah.
So decisions wise, yeah, I think deciding to own it in the largest sense, deciding to take responsibility. And that doesn't mean that things are your fault. It doesn't mean that you don't suddenly become in control of everything. But I guess it probably goes back to the Stoics or something, doesn't it? This idea, the obstacle is the way, that kind of thing. And that idea of saying, well, okay, I'm going to accept reality first, and now I'm going to see what I could do about it. So that would be a decision. And to make it, bring it a bit more back down to earth and practical, I would say the number one most effective decision after taking responsibility is to take the decision to craft alongside your identity, which you were just talking about, your identity as a musician, a creative person, and all the other identities we have, to start crafting this identity of something like a business owner, something like that. Now, again, words are important, and you know the impact of these words are different for everyone. So some people listening to this might say, oh, I don't want to be a business owner. Well, that's okay. How would you describe someone that takes responsibility and gets these kinds of results that you want? How would you describe the kind of person or the kind of identity of someone who is stable, doing the things that you want to do? So I talk about it with my clients as taking sort of a producer. I mean, and this is my very specific use of these words, but taking a producer, or yes, like a business owner perspective on things. Because when you do that, it allows you to step out of your, I must do my 19 hours of practice a day and say, right,
Yeah.
because it's important, but it's also safe, because we know how to do that, don't we?
We do.
We're really good at that already. And of course, when you do your 19 hours of practice a day, that leads to a certain result, which we all like. So it's very attractive. But actually, is that result the one that you really want? Or do you want the result of stability? So if you take this business owner perspective and you say, well, okay, if I've got, you sort of take a step out of yourself for a moment and look at yourself as you are your best employee. How do we need to direct and look after this person so that they get stability? Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, if you can step out a little bit, you just come up with by stepping into a different perspective, you see opportunity and the world differently. And you say things like, well, what would be a recent example? It's like, oh, actually, I've got to stop doing those gigs that don't pay me very well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because if I had those 6 hours a fortnight back, I could do X, Y, and Z. That in 3 months would mean I'd be doing these gigs that pay way more, or I could develop this show or this company or this opportunity. So that yeah, that I would say is the next big decision. And you've got to make the decision in your own words so that it works for you. But it's being able to, it's deciding to take a new perspective and look at things from this perspective of someone who is interested in, focused on the stability stuff. And yeah, I call it producer or business owner mindset.
I really appreciate you finding language that suits what each individual artist might feel around this, because I've also experienced some resistance in our freelance artist community, for example, where they're like, we don't want to be business owners. I'm not a business person. It's about the art. Art's number one, and a lot of resistance, especially with the, I have to say, American mentality of, sales, big numbers, go for it, hustler, because, we've got a lot of Europeans in our crowd too, and they're like, we're not sure. So I appreciate saying, okay, how would you describe someone who is taking care of themselves, or taking care of their work, taking care of their employees? How would you describe taking care of your art world so that you have stability, your concert calendar is full, your students are happy, you feel fulfilled as a teacher, giving master classes? How many master classes do you need to feel stable? I mean, these are great frame questions to help people get out of what we've been taught. Do you have any? Yeah, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really enjoy, I don't know, forgive me if this metaphor of this story only exists in the part of England in which I grew up. But I really like, I'm sure it doesn't, but
Which is
really,
where, by the way, out of curiosity.
oh yeah, so I was born in Bedford, which is just outside of London,
Okay.
and then I actually grew up in the northeast, like up around in Durham, near Newcastle. But so I really like the idea of the goose that lays the golden eggs. Is that a story that resonates?
I've heard, as a Canadian, I've heard this.
Of course you have. So the idea would be that in this telling of the story, you are both the goose that lays the golden eggs. You are also the farmer that looks after the goose that lays the golden eggs, right? So you have to be careful not to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, right?
Yeah.
You are responsible for doing the thing and making sure that the person doing the thing is in a position, to lay those golden eggs, to continue. Yeah. So that brings it. And as soon as you take that perspective, as soon as you take the farmer perspective, you're like, oh, well, I've got to feed them. I've got to look after them. Give them somewhere to run around. I should check in and see how they're doing every now and then. So I really like that as a metaphor for the kind of, taking that second perspective, being able to take that second perspective, being able to step back and look at the bigger picture. I think that that's a really useful, and there's no business language in there to get worried about. And of course, we all understand that. We all have words and phrases that don't work for us. Mm-hmm. And part of pushing your own buttons is figuring out what are the words and phrases that really work for you. What are the things that you've got to say to yourself, or how do you get other people to communicate with you so that you get like switched on rather than switched off? But that is our responsibility. We can't expect other people to figure that out for us,
Right. So when you say pushing your own buttons, you're saying this in a positive sense.
100%.
Okay,
yeah.
I've only understood it as the negative, like when you're getting triggered. So can you elaborate a bit on on how pushing your own meaning, finding what works for you? Or is that an analogy?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's interesting. That's so interesting. I don't think I've ever heard it used in the negative sense. So this is
well,
great.
My sister and I push each other's buttons all the time, and that's not a good thing.
Now when someone else pushes your buttons,
okay,
not necessarily a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you learn to push your own buttons to get what you want, that's the positive.
Okay.
We all have buttons. And of course, you can create new buttons. Mm-hmm. But we all have existing buttons. And if we could just learn to push those buttons in the right sequence so that we have whatever is important to us. So for me, a big value would be peace. I love that. It's a really important part of my life. Now, of course, you don't always have it, and you've got to be flexible and you've got to be able to deal with things changing. But I know that peace is important to me. So I will push the peace button. I will create opportunities for peace because I know it's important to me. So what would other examples of positively pushing your own buttons be? It's useful, I think, to learn how to, for example, generate the feeling of confidence for things, right? So although we're familiar with terms like stage fright, just for a moment, which you can deal with very easily, by the way, but just for a moment, pushing those things to the side, most of the people probably watching or listening to this have a level of confidence when they walk on stage, right? The vast majority of people.
Right.
Because probably they wouldn't be putting up with all the other stuff if they didn't at least like being on stage. Some of those people, though, and this is completely human and reasonable, when it comes to maybe picking up the phone to talk to a venue or someone they might collaborate with or someone they could create with, shut down completely, don't they? Like the idea is terrifying to them. Or I think you do some sort of sales-ish kind of training, don't you? And I've seen that there's it's probably a conversation for another day, Michelle, but I saw there's an excellent like pitch workshop or something coming up.
Oh, yes. Perfect your pitch. Yeah.
Which looked amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing it.
It's because I get so many bad pitches. I'm like, we need to talk about this.
Yeah. Can I tell you, tiny aside, there's an MD that I get to work with a lot here who I really like, and he's great. On the gigs that we do together, the MD has like a little talkback mic straight into our ears, you know? And he's famous, because we're all friends, and he's famous for giving live notes during a show on how you're doing. No, it's great. It's really funny because it's all very friendly and it just makes everyone laugh. But there's a great thing where he said to another drummer friend of ours recently on the mic, the MD had asked this drummer, Matt, to do something a bit different in this particular section. He'd gone like, no problem. And then it got to it and he did something a bit different. And Graham just got on the mic and went, do we need to talk about that later? And I feel like that's the same with your pitch thing. You know, it's like, I think we need to talk about pitching, don't we?
Yes.
Sorry, where were we? Oh yeah, pushing your buttons. So confident. So people are happy walking on stage. Loads of people out there in the civilian population would never walk on stage with a clarinet or an oboe. They couldn't conceive of doing it. And yet, when it comes to making some kind of a business related call or maybe pitching for work or a quote for a performance or something, they get very timid. Now, of course, what you can do is you can learn to push that button to summon the confidence that you can create when you walk on stage, and you can sort of transplant it into a different context. So that's what I mean when I talk about pushing your own buttons and knowing how to motivate yourself to take new action, knowing how to get yourself to pleasantly do something that's difficult or uncomfortable. Ooh. And I'd say they're the fundamental, for my way of thinking about things, they're the most fundamental things that you want to kind of develop, especially in our kind of freelance, self-employed, business owner type environment, slightly, entrepreneurial performer, especially in that environment where no one else is really, we don't have a line manager who's saying like, oh, hey, Steve, what do you need? We are the farmer and the goose laying the golden eggs. We've got to do all that. So yeah.
It's funny you say that because that was the first question that came to my mind if I thought of the farmer, what they would say to the goose is, oh, what does the goose need? And so for any musician who has a hard time with self-care, I think a lot of musicians roll their eyes at that word self-care. But if you're thinking of like, what would this golden goose need to continue in a healthy way? It's a lot easier to speak that way because it's not you. It's objectively something else that is beautiful and important and worthy and needs to be seen and needs to produce because we need to keep going. So if we think of our gift as a thing to protect, I think that can be very helpful.
That's great. And I couldn't agree more. I think that's perfect. And there's also just because a big part of this NLP stuff is you develop a light and I think healthy obsession with language. And so you said something great there, which was, what does this goose... We should definitely continue this metaphor for the whole conversation. I'm going to bring it in as many times as possible. So, okay, you say, what does the goose need? You could also ask, okay, what does the goose need? What does the goose want? Mm-hmm. Because some people are more positively activated to do the things that they want rather than the things that they need. Mm-hmm. So if you can figure out that language for yourself, if you can become aware, do I do the things that I need to do? Do I do the things that I should do? That's another good one. Do I do the things that I want to do? Do I do the things that I like to do? And then, of course, you can start to express things in the terms that actually work for you. For example, let's use tax returns because we were talking about it before. Here we go. Yeah, you tell me how this affects you. So for me, if I think about just changing that one word in each sentence, I could say, right, I should start my tax return earlier. That doesn't feel good to me. I'm not going to do it. In fact, I know I'm not going to do it. Even though I should do it, I'm not going to do it. Now, some people do what they should do, right?
That's not me.
No. Well, let's play the game, right? Okay, so should, we've both got rid of should. It's no useful. So
I'm here. I love the game.
Right. So interestingly, right? So that's when you say it to yourself. Now, I wonder if somebody else said to you, you really should do your tax return earlier. You're probably not going to do it either. In fact, by the look on your face there, Michelle, I would say that was a bad thing to say to you, right?
Unless you're my accountant who has a right to say so.
Right, exactly. So let's play with some different words. So what about if you said to yourself, I need to start my tax return earlier? Now, for me, that does make it seem a lot more important, but I don't feel good about doing it. What about for you?
I need to because there's a consequence if I don't, is what comes to mind. So
Right.
I can get more behind that word. Yes, but it's not ideal.
So, but it's more powerful, but it's not pleasant for you, right?
Right.
Now, what if somebody else said to you, you need, right? Is that motivating?
Depends if it's coming from an encouraging tone or a critical tone.
Tone is also a big part of this. Thank you for bringing that up. It's not just about the words themselves. Of course, delivery is really important. So anyway, just to fast forward through that process, you will find that even for boring or unpleasant seeming tasks, there is a set of language, a way of describing it to yourself that makes it feel better or lighter. And for me, it's usually a word that opens up possibility. So if I say to myself, do you know what? I've got a couple of hours this morning. I could start my tax return. My next thought is, can I start my tax return? I can start my tax return. And then it goes, I am going to start my tax return. So I know that sequence for me.
Those are your buttons.
I've learned how to push my buttons for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is just one of the biggest things that you can get from coaching. And you could start to investigate it yourself. It doesn't have to be with a guide. I think it's a lot easier with a guide, but that is a useful thing, I think, for anyone in our kind of world and our kind of position where they are responsible for their own success. That's a good example of learning how to push your own buttons.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I know my first button is always coffee. Does that count as a button?
I think that we can
the
both.
Button on the espresso machine.
It's that. Well, hey, we say that as a joke, and I completely agree with you. By the way, that's a lovely button to start the day with.
No, the thought that you said of making things lighter, I think that's a beautiful thought. How can we take some of this pressure off, and how can we make things more joyful? And looking for the good. One way that we do that actually in our membership is we have co-working sessions.
Great.
So get everybody on Zoom. I mean, the last couple of days, I've got 4 or 5 of them who have come and I suffer with me, as I said in our Slack channel, who can come on now for 3 hours, and then we all just lock in. And at some point, somebody, is like, is everybody still alive? Are we doing okay? So that for me makes it lighter to work together with others.
That's a big.
It's
sorry. That's a really big deal, and I bet that it's actually a really big deal for 40% of the people. I'm plucking that number out of nowhere based on zero research, but a lot of people that are listening to this, and it may not be something that has occurred to anyone. I actually considered setting up a co-working thing for some of my clients. I might well do it next year, but I think that's a really good idea, because what do we not get as individual freelancers? We don't get that experience of being like, do you want to take a break? Should we go and get a cup of tea?
Yeah. Or
hang on, I just need 5 minutes. What did you get up to at the weekend? That we don't get that water. We don't get the natural breaks. And I'm really excited to hear that you've set that up, because I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, yeah, it's been very, very powerful. It's kind of, I mean, for me as a classical pianist, we all practiced on the same floor. So every morning, 7, 8 a.m., you get there, you fight for a piano. There's only, 7 or 8 rooms. You hear all the pianos around you practicing. It's really setting the tone, setting the environment. And I think that was one of the biggest losses that I had leaving school. And I didn't realize that practicing at home, which is such a loneliness to not have your pianist next door that you can then go chat with, as you're saying. So I think there's even an app that was developed by Ray Chen, and it simulates the effect of multiple instruments practicing at the same time as you so that you can get back into that environment. So, yeah.
So that's great. And using that NLP stuff, what you could do is you could recreate from that strong, positive, beautiful, energizing memory you have of practicing around you. You could recreate that environment for yourself so that when you sit down, you're in that frame of mind, and you can have the joy or the energy or whatever it was that you got from the people around you. That would be the internal thing. And then, of course, you schedule a call with your piano player friend. Maybe you're both going to practice from 9 till 11, and then at 11 o'clock, you're going to take a 15-minute break and you're going to chat piano, like you might have done in the bar at college or the coffee shop or wherever it was. Yeah.
Okay, then I think I need you to tell us all about NLP and how you recreate these feelings, associations, I think is a little bit about. Yeah, can you give us the outline?
Sure. So neurolinguistic programming gets talked about quite a lot, especially on the internet, and sometimes by people that perhaps haven't done a great deal of training in it. Maybe they've read a book or seen someone else's video on the internet. And without going through all of the history and stuff, fundamentally, a good way to think about it is NLP is not a tool. NLP is a set of tools to create tools, right? So it's not a hammer. It's a machine that can help you make the perfect hammer for whatever you need to nail in or whatever you need to fix. So
like a 3D printer.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's very nice. It's a 3D printer that also comes with music and sounds and feelings and smells, and it's a full sensory experience. And so it's got lots of component parts. The N bit for sort of neurology is the bit that we talked about most so far, which is the creating these sort of vivid representations of different things. Then the L for linguistic is, well, we have talked a bit about that. We talked about the language. We talked about the power of words and the way they influence our state and what we can then go and do. And the programming bit, yes, is the idea that you can do this stuff on purpose. So if we were to talk about, I suppose we've already done it actually. So if you think of when we were talking about kind of setting the goals for stability, and we talked about what you might see in the world when you had stability, what you might hear, what you might say to yourself, and how that would feel. Well, we do the same thing to, if you like, recreate the experience of you practicing. What school did you go? What college did you go to?
In Montreal, University of Montreal.
Amazing. So if you don't have to do this now because we're not in a coaching session, but you can imagine that.
It came to mind instantly. It's on the top of a hill, and we all had to drag ourselves up this hill to get there. It's just
well, and I'm going to go a little stage further, which is that I'm going to suggest to you that you have a picture or a video of doing that, and it's here, because you just, as you were describing it, you sort of gestured in this area. So if you were to, we may as well just do it. So if you were to look at whatever picture or film might be here, what would you see there? What would the image be?
just walking up the côte in French it's called, and the wall alongside the sidewalk. There's a lot of ice. You take one step, you might slip back two in the middle of winter. And the hall was directly in front of you. So you're like, if I could just get to the hall parking lot, then I can get into the school building.
That's amazing. Now, so you've just given me loads of information there, and already you're getting a little reminder feeling of that, aren't you? So when you see that, as you imagine it, is it a still picture or is it more like a movie? Is it more like a moving picture?
I guess I'm moving in the picture because I'm trying to get up this hill.
Absolutely brilliant. And do you see yourself in that picture, or is it like you're actually there experiencing it as you did the first time?
No, I'm walking through, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so, and you say to yourself, if I could just get to the top of the hill,
Yeah, well, it's just like, okay, I know what I got to do to get up there. So yes, I'm encouraging myself.
Right. So you encourage, and when you encourage yourself, you use a certain tone of voice, don't you?
hmm
So you
hmm
don't have to say it out loud, but in your head, if you were to pick a sentence that would be encouraging in that moment, you can probably think of one, can't you?
I'm gonna go practice.
I'm going to go practice. Now say it in a way that is encouraging.
I'm gonna go practice.
Yeah. And how does that feel?
Like I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So if you were to make a picture of walking up the hill past the wall and saying to yourself, I'm going to go practice in that tone of voice. You can do it now. And as you do that and imagine it, maybe say it in your head over a few times to yourself. How does that feel?
Well, the next thing that came to mind is I hope I can get a piano because we always had to wrestle for these 7 rooms of pianos, but I have one all the time in my house now. So yeah, maybe
Perfect.
I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, it feels like a little bit of excitement.
Yeah. So now just go further forward in that video. So extend the scene, okay, and go to the moment where you've got a piano and it's working out exactly how you want it to. In fact, let's go to a time you've had these. We've all had them. Imagine, remember a practice session where it was just like, oh my word, I'm really doing it. I am fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've all had at least one experience of that in a practice room at some point.
Yeah.
So if you imagine that and imagine having that experience of the practice session going really well, what do you say to yourself then?
Then I'm looking forward to my lesson
Looking forward to my lesson. Yeah, that feels nice,
to
doesn't it?
work with my teacher, who I adore.
Right. And you can probably imagine their face, like congratulating you on having done a good job, maybe, So look, you've started to build a representation. And how does it feel when you think about that? When you think about seeing your teacher and you've done well.
Yeah, pride, excitement, want to keep going,
Great.
practice harder.
Great. That's amazing. That's exactly what we want also at the end of a practice session, isn't it? We want to feel like we want to do it again.
It's good work. It was work. Like it's good to work that hard.
Yeah, it's good to work that hard. Okay, great. So as you have all of this in your mind, you mentioned pride and all that. Where do you feel that sort of positive feeling within yourself? Where do you notice that feeling?
I think my chest swells.
Great. So imagine that happening, okay? And then what you can do is, don't need to go through the whole thing, obviously, but you've already generated that feeling of your chest swelling, right? So if you wanted to go and practice now, you could do it, couldn't you?
Yeah, I'm thinking about how I need to shift the energy when I come into my living room to create more of that feeling of when I was going to I have to get a room. Like there was this anticipation. It's like a competition because you got to fight everybody else for a room. Maybe I need a little bit of that edge.
So, and what you've just done is you've created that edge. You've remembered an experience that when you had that edge, and in just thinking about it in that detail of the visual, the sound and the feeling, you got a taste of that feeling, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And what we can do in NLP is we can do quite a lot. It's a slightly longer process, but you can very quickly kind of amp up that feeling and really supercharge it. And if you want, you could bring in other things. So, you mentioned having that edge. You also mentioned the pride of doing well, wanting to do more, the feeling of it being good to work that hard. You could put all of those different things together and turn it into kind of a super practice feeling, and that would be a button that you could then practice pushing.
Oh, that's cool.
Because then as you practice, every time you rehearse that feeling of the pride and the edge as you go to practice, every time you practice that, a bit like muscle memory, which of course, as we all know, is not muscle memory, it's neurological memory. Mm-hmm. You're wiring that response to the idea of practicing into your neurology. And the more intensely you wire it in and the more often you wire it in, the easier it is for your brain to go there automatically. And that's what we all want, isn't it? When you talk about identity and moving towards an identity that you've chosen for yourself, what we want those things to become the new natural way of doing it. And that's how you do it. You wire the neurology on purpose, and then you just keep pressing the button. And an easy way to think about it is we all have unhelpful buttons that we ourselves press for ourselves or that other people press for us. You mentioned your sister. So we know that this works. Why not start doing it for good feelings and positive things on purpose?
Like ants, automated negative thoughts.
I've never heard that before, but that sounds fantastic. Yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah,
that's the default that we go into these negative spirals. So yes, what you're saying is fantastic to just wire the other way. And
yeah.
I'm realizing as you've been speaking that I have wired myself for the performer version of me because when I'm about to go on stage, I often talk about flipping a lever.
Hmm.
So now it's just about wiring it for the practicing part too. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, and I would say that as a uh, yeah, as a musician, practicing is going to be such a big part of your life. Why not have it be a great time?
I
You
don't
know,
think most musicians have been taught how to have a great time with it. So
no,
this is just fascinating to think about. Yeah.
yeah. I mean that, and when we say that, that doesn't mean what you're doing is you're increasing your capacity to deal with difficult things, aren't you? It's resilience as
Hmm.
well, isn't it? So, you know, you're still, there will be times in the practice room when you will still really push yourself and you might hit that edge of frustration because frustration is part of learning, and it's not about being afraid of that, but it's about putting yourself in the best position to start and to stick with it for long enough to get to the frustration, to get to whatever the growth zone is for you,
Hmm.
And again, another example of pushing your own buttons, I suppose, would be knowing what it feels like when you've got into that zone where you're really practicing, like you're not just warming up anymore, you're not just getting into it, knowing, being able to identify, oh, I'm right, my brain's learning. That would be another good button to be able to push.
I love this. There's so much to explore in this. We'll have to have you back to have a part two because I want to dig deeper into this.
Love to, yeah.
We love to finish our episodes with an action point for everyone listening. So maybe you want to tie it into this wonderful exercise that you just led me through, or maybe it's something else from our conversation today. But I mean, everything. I'm going to be mulling over this for a while. It's been very, very helpful.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm very happy to chat again anytime. Action point, I would say pick a button of your own that you want to be able to press. Pick a, you could think about it from the feeling perspective or from the activity perspective. What is a thing that you want to be able to do consistently? And when you're making that choice, because that's a big choice, you want to do it with reference to a serious goal of yours. So something that you really want, something that would be impactful and powerful, and then say, okay, well, what button do I need to, what's the most important button for me to be able to press to move so that I do whatever is required to move closer to that thing? So pick a goal, pick whatever the most useful button would be, and then just ask yourself the question, what could I possibly do to activate that feeling in me? Coffee might be part of it, you
Hmm.
know, like it could be, sometimes it's little sequence of activities, sometimes it's, if it's practicing, it's like, well, the way to push that button is actually, sometimes it's just nice to start with a cup of tea or coffee. So, okay, I'm going to have a cup of tea or coffee. I'm going to give myself just 10 minutes just to settle. And then I'm going to walk into the practice room, you know?
Yeah.
So just figure out, and one more thing that you could do is the thing that you and I just did, which is think of a time when you did have that feeling, or when that process, that button was being pushed, was active, because there will have been times. And just try and vividly remember what it was like. What did you see? What did you hear? And how did it feel? Where are you aware of the feeling in your body? And I think that's really valuable. If you can start to do that, if you can start to identify experiences that you've already had that you could use to move you closer to your goals.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, John. This has been wonderful to chat with you and to hear more about NLP and also your coaching approach. How can people find you? How can they stay in touch with you?
I love a chat. So the best thing to do is probably get in touch with me on Instagram, which is Coach John Blackburn. I'm sure we'll put some things in show notes or whatever. I'm also on LinkedIn quite a lot. Yeah, they're probably the best, but Instagram is probably the best place. And I would love to hear from I love to hear what people are up to, especially musicians and creative type people. You know, if you're working on something, tell me about it. Like, what are people doing? And yeah, whether we sort of jump on a little Zoom call just to hear what you're up to, or if you've got something you want to explore, like I'm always open to that stuff. So yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Everybody, make sure you go check out John on Instagram and LinkedIn. He's also got a free download on how to negotiate for higher fees, which is very helpful. So go get that from his Instagram. Make sure you share this to your stories. We will be resharing. John, thank you for your time today. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Be fearless. Thanks, John.
That's great. Thanks, Michelle.